Greetings and salutations, all you wonderful people on the internet. My name is Antwon, and welcome to another episode of Help for the Guiltless. I do have two things that I'm going to be talking about today, but before I get to that, I do want to apologize to all you amazing people that I have not been living up to my word as a host. And that means I haven't been able to actually do the recording that I said I was going to until now. I posted on the Facebook page that I was going to be recording it that night, and unfortunately some things came up, and, well, here it is now. So I'm going to make up for it by talking about two things. Two separate topics that are combined with one subject. Yes, I have two things, two for the price of one, and all you have to do is let your wonderful, wonderful ear holes be graced by my voice. So, let's talk about what I posted on the Facebook page first, and that is Ghostbusters 2016 has officially been declared a flop. And to that, all of the geeks and nerds worldwide and fans of the franchise, collective, well, duh. We knew this was going to be a flop after we saw the first preview and saw that it was absolute shit. But, you know what, to be honest, I wanted this movie to succeed. I really did. Unfortunately, I knew it wasn't, because very few times have I ever been wrong, and this is definitely not one of them. I'm not going to go over the reasons why this movie flopped. I'm just going to go over the aftermath. More or less, I'm going to be talking about why multiple different news publications decided that they needed to actually declare in an article that Ghostbusters was a flop. Now, I want you to think about that. And I want you to think really hard. When was the last time any publication came out with a resounding, "This movie is a flop, we are declaring it"? I can wait. I can tell you this, it hasn't happened for a very long time. And it usually happens when a movie garners quite a bit of attention. And as we all know, Ghostbusters 2016 has garnered a lot of attention. So, I'm going to go over a little bit of why they needed to do this. And more or less, I want to talk about how this is kind of an apology. It's not really, but it's kind of saying, look, you were right, we were wrong. So, what causes someone to actually post an article like this? Well, for that, it's because when you push an agenda so ham-fistedly as they did in this movie, you have to make a couple of addendums when it fails. And unfortunately for Sony, as we have seen, this movie failed. This movie failed so hard. And again, I say I really did want it to succeed because I'm a fan. But let's go over the last 4 weeks, shall we? And give the reason why this movie has been declared, well, a bomb. Even though the promotional materials say otherwise. Shall we? So, if you go to Box Office Mojo, and you look up Ghostbusters 2016, and you click on the Weekly tab, it'll give you the last 4 weeks that this movie has been out. Now, week 1, they debuted with an amazing $65 million. Okay, so not quite amazing, but for being a mid-July debut movie, it did okay. Now realize, it was only going up against, really, a couple of movies. One which has already been out a month, which was Finding Dory. The other one, that they lost out to, which of course was The Secret Life of Pets. Now I want you to take that number, 65 million, and really think about it, because the opening box office weekend is a good judge of how much money this movie is actually going to make. Now, they debuted at number 2, and it's usually downhill from there, because there are very few movies that debut poorly and then suddenly gain and garner attention for week 2. So week 2, they dropped down to 5th place, with a box office gross of 31 million. That's just over half of the revenue from the week before. Now, I do want to point out that on week 2, they got beat out by a movie with a limited run and half the budget. Now, what I mean by a limited run is it was a special engagement. AMC decided to show, since it was being released, Batman the Killing Joke at a few select theaters across the country. And when I say a few select theaters, I am talking about maybe 50. One per state on average. Now, there is more, I'm sure. It's more likely about 100. But you have to understand that Ghostbusters was released worldwide. The Killing Joke was released domestically and in limited amount. What that means is, they were at number 5, The Killing Joke was at number 4. The Killing Joke made more with less. And the downfall continues. The third week, it dropped down to 8th place, and that's because at the beginning of August and at the end of July, there is not much that is being released. And unfortunately, it's going to continue to fall. On week 3, they made 15 million. And then finally on week 4, ending on the 11th of August, they ended up on 9th place with a whopping 7 million. Now, if you take into consideration all the little numbers, they have made domestically $121 million. That is not anywhere near the production budget of 144. $23 million is a lot of money. Now, I want to say that Ghostbusters needed to make at least $300 million to even break even. And that's what the worldwide gross is well. Now, why is worldwide so important? Well, because there is more of it. It's not just taking into consideration America, the USA. It's taking into consideration everything. And normally what happens is that the worldwide market ends up being more than what the domestic market is, because there are more people watching. Now, I want to point out that because China was not included, for some reason China did not want Ghostbusters to be aired. And the reason why, I believe, had something to do with symbolism and something like that. It had nothing to do with them being for women catching ghosts. Now, the problem with that is that the worldwide gross was only $72 million. So, in total, Ghostbusters has made about $193 million. That sounds like a lot, with the worldwide box office added onto it. Yes, they made back the $144 million. But like I said, they had to make about $300 million to break even. And the reason why is because half of that goes back. They only make about half. Half that goes back to pay for the actresses, goes back to pay for all the small people working on it, plus promotional materials, and paying theaters and things like that. So, as of right now, they've made about $100 million on this movie. give or take. It'll probably make, after this week, another 5 million or so domestically, maybe 4, and then probably another 3 worldwide. So we're going to end up week 5 when they drop out of actual rotation of the theaters, about $200 million even. And that's give or take, that's an estimation. That's bad. Now, like I said, they have to make a minimum of 300 million to even break even. But as the Hollywood Reporter has said, the news isn't good. The divisive all-female remake is set to post a $70 million loss, which dashes any hopes of a sequel. Good. Look, this reboot failed because of the ham-fisted ideology that was forced in it, poor writing, the director and actresses insulting the fans, and just horrible CGI. Fans of the franchise, more or less owners of the property. Now, I'm not talking about the rights, I'm talking about the property. And believe me when I say this, fans own the property. We are the reason you got to make the damn movie in the first place. So, fans of the owners of the property want a few things. And they're not difficult, but at the same time, quite impossible. What do we want? Well, first off, we want the exact same thing that made us like the movie in the first place. We don't want it to change. We don't want anything different. We want what made us love the franchise that you are rebooting. In essence, we want you to capture lightning in a bottle twice. That's a tall order, I understand. There are some additions that make that a little bit easier. We want homages to the past cast. And I will admit, Ghostbusters 2016 did that, except they didn't pay an homage. It wasn't, oh look, this is taking place because of these people. It was, oh look, we have them as cameos. We have them saying specific voice lines. We put in a bust of Harold Ramis just for you. That is shoving it down our throats, telling us that, yes, we know that we're taking your actors and we are shoving them in your face, but this movie has nothing to do with them. You see, Dan Aykroyd did not play Ray Stantz. He played Cab Driver. Bill Murray did not play Peter Venkman. He played the Dick Mayor. Ernie Hudson did not play Winston Zedmore. He played Leslie Jones's character. He played Patty's uncle. And Harold Ramis, the bust of him, was not to Egon Spangler. It was to whoever it was. I couldn't catch the name. Annie Potts did not play Janine. She played whatever character she played, and Sigourney Weaver did not play her part either. She did not play Dana. They were all completely separate. So we did not get that. We wanted an homage to the cast. Yes, if you want to add cameos, that's fine, but don't take the franchise and say, we're putting it in a completely different universe, but we're going to have the cast. So that's number 2. Number 3, we do want a different story. We don't want the same thing given to us. When I said before we want the exact same thing that made us love it in the first place, I'm talking about points in the movie, jokes, timing, things like that. Something Ghostbusters 2016 had none of. Instead of having dry and witty humor, it had toilet humor. Instead of having a straight man playing up to 3 comedic actors, we had 4 comedians trying to eat the scenery better than the other person. And apparently the only one who actually could do anything about it was Kate McKinnon. Now, I'm not saying that this couldn't have been a success. It's just that Ghostbusters 2016 went down the wrong avenues to try and get said success. So, aside from wanting the same thing we got before, an homage to the cast, a decent story, we also want upgraded and better graphics. We want CGI. We want what newer movies have to offer. And we don't, unless the cast is young enough, we don't want the old cast. We understand that it has to be a new cast. We don't mind the updates, that's the problem. You think we did. Those 4 things are not that difficult. Well, okay, the first one is. But the 5th one, which is a reboot sin, is what we definitely don't want. And it's pandering. And it's only been done one time that I can recollect, and it failed miserably. And that is, we do not want a verbatim, word for word, cut for cut, scene for scene remake. We want something different. And case in point being the movie I mentioned before, which was the remake of Psycho, which was updated with better film footage, better, newer actors, I can't say better, but updated graphics in the whole thing. The problem was the story was word for word the same thing. Scene for scene the same thing. You could take both cuts of the movie, play them side by side, and nothing would change except the inflection from the actors. We don't want that. But recently there's been a new form of reboot, and I will bring that up again in a second, but we're going to talk about how reboots can be successful and why they're not. You see, reboots, the successful ones, you can probably count on one hand, because they are the exception to the rule. They are the outliers. It does not happen. Reboots have very rarely been successful. I could go down a list of 100 reboots that did not succeed, but I can list maybe 2 that did. And one of them, which this is a segue to the next topic I was going to talk about, was Ocean's 11. For those of you who don't know, Ocean's 11 was a reboot. It was a movie that was rebooted from the 1970s. Ocean's 11 was originally starred by the Rat Pack. And as much as I love old Frankie Blue Eyes and Dino and Sammy, they were horrible actors. They really were. It was bad. Now, the ensemble cast of the newer Ocean's 11, we had George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, we had Steven Sondheim directing, we had Julia Roberts, we had an amazing cast. And the story was great. The acting was on par. And you got this world built around you while you were watching it. Daniel Ocean was a part of something bigger that had honor amongst thieves. There were rules that were not to be broken. And this movie was successful enough to garner a sequel. And that sequel did something that... Now, it didn't do as much as the first one, but it did enough. But it did something that the audiences appreciated, and that was keeping them on edge. It did something that most sequels can't do. It kept the audience guessing what was going to happen. This was not just another heist movie. This was done completely differently. And then, of course, that made enough to garner a third movie in the franchise, which made it a trilogy. We had Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, and now Ocean's 13. Ocean's 13 did not hold the same praise as the first two. Now, it is a good movie on its own. There are bits and pieces that are actually really good, but it did not have the same spark that the first one did. And the third one is more of a revenge heist than it was just them doing what they were going to do. Now, again, as I said, this brings me to my second topic. The Oceans franchise is going to be rebooted again. And I don't know how I feel about this. I am a huge fan of the Oceans franchise. And, well, the new one is going to be called Oceans Ocho. Now, I don't mean... I'm being hyperbolic. It's not going to be actually titled Oceans Ocho. It's actually being called Oceans 8. And they're doing the same exact thing they did with Ghostbusters. Wiping out everything that they had before and now doing an all-female cast. Why it's not Oceans 11 again, I don't know. I guess they couldn't get 11 extremely talented actresses to play the parts. But I digress. The cast seems quite interesting, what's been announced so far. So in the cast we have 3 Oscar-winning actresses, 1 Oscar-nominated actress, and a couple others. We have Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett, Anne Hathaway, Rihanna, Helen Bonham Carter, Mindy Kaling, I don't know who that is, and Awkwafina. Awkwafina is the hip hop moniker of Asian American rapper and actress Nora Lum, who I'm assuming is going to be playing the role of the Grease Man, Chen. Except I don't know if that's going to be her name. I'm not being racially stereotypical. I'm just going off of what actually was in the movie. Hollywood, please listen. Please. Fans have spoken already with Ghostbusters. You thought you could sneak one by us. And the box office of Ghostbusters 2016 speaks volumes. Do not do this again. For the love of God, please don't. Rebooting a franchise and just doing it to ham-fistedly put women in iconic roles because of, well, vagina is not a good idea. It's a bad idea. Now, there is something to be said, for we don't know the story of what Ocean's 8 is going to be about. Is it going to be a complete reboot like Ghostbusters 2016, or is it going to be not necessarily a sequel but take place in the same universe? Or is it going to be the new type of reboot? One that was successful. This is the other one that I mentioned out of the 2 that I can name. The new genre of reboot is actually a continuation. And we got that with Jurassic World. You see, Jurassic World was actually a reboot of the franchise, not necessarily a sequel, because it has nothing to do, aside from the dinosaurs, with the first movie, or the second, or the god-awful third. But it was a continuation. The writers said, "It's been 20 years." And people were like, yes, it has. And the writers were like, no, you don't understand. It's been 20 years in the Jurassic Park universe. They have continued. Time has gone on. The park has been opened. Everything has been going according to what people would genuinely do over 20 years of advanced technology. And the continuation gave us everything that we as owners of franchises wanted. It gave us exactly what we got from the first one that made us love it like we do. It gave us a brand new cast. It paid homages to the last cast, talking about Hammond, mentioning Malcolm, on top of that bringing up what Alan Grant had said. And it gave us updated story. New characters to fall behind, to get behind. And I have to say this, I am a fan of his, Vincent D'Onofrio. Any movie that Vincent D'Onofrio is going to be in, well, I'll go watch it, because it's usually going to be good. And I will, just a side note, he's in the new Magnificent Seven that's coming out. I've seen the previews for this movie. Oh my god, I'm going to go see it. Again, a reboot that has a chance of being successful. Back to what I was saying. Also, that fifth thing that I listed, it did not give us word for word, verbatim, scene for scene, cut for cut story. It hit everything, and it was something different. So here's my idea, Hollywood. Pay attention. Ocean's 8. We're not going to reboot. We're going to reboot, but it's going to be a continuation. Daniel Ocean and Tess have retired. He's actually retired. He's done. He's no longer part of the scene, of the thieving world. As a matter of fact, he settled down. He had a kid. He had a daughter. Now, we don't know what part Sandra Bullock is going to play, but I'm assuming that she's going to be one of the leads, like either part of George Clooney part, she's going to be an Ocean, or she's going to be a Rusty. And I'm assuming she's going to be an Ocean. Cate Blanchett is going to be playing the Reuben one, I can guarantee that. Now, Sandra Bullock, let's say it's Daniel Ocean's sister. She's still in. She doesn't want to give up the life, but she has a job and she needs a team. She goes to her brother. They grew up together, they learned the trade together. Why not? Maybe get some advice, maybe get his help. She goes to him, he says, I'm retired. But I may have someone who was kind of an apprentice. So she goes to go meet this apprentice. Lo and behold, who is it? She's waiting, and she hears Aunt Ocean. I don't know what her character's going to be named. Aunt Danny, I don't know. She turns around, it's her niece, Daniel Ocean's daughter, who he taught everything to. What this means is that this is not a continuation, or this is not a reboot. It's not getting rid of everything that they did in the first three. It is paying the homage by having Daniel Ocean still be in the universe. It's just opening it up and saying, life has gone on since you all stopped paying attention. All the rest of the characters can be whatever. They can be the parts they need to be. But if you have that, you will draw the fans in. And this movie won't be a flaming turdsicle like Ghostbusters. We don't know what the story is yet on Ocean's 8. We don't know what the plot is. We don't know who the director is really. We don't know who the writers are. We don't know anything about this movie. We don't even know who the villain is going to be. So, listen. And let me tell you, Hollywood, pay attention to the fans. Pay attention to what we want. Because if you do, this will be successful. And you can make an Ocean's 9 and an Ocean's 10. Do not screw this up. So, those are my ideas. I can't say it's a great idea, and I can't say my opinion is the best one out there. But I can tell you this. I know movies. And I called Ghostbusters being a flop just as everyone else did. For Ocean's 8, I have high hopes. Just as I had high hopes for Ghostbusters. And I mean, that's all I really have to say, unfortunately. I'd like to say more, but I've already been rambling for 30 minutes or more. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you for listening to what I had to say, folks. And if you enjoyed this, please hit like, share, subscribe. Impose me on your friends. Make them listen. You can use me as a torture device, I don't care. If you didn't like what I had to say, please put it in a comment. I will come back and we can have a conversation. Civil, uncivil, you can throw insults at me, it doesn't matter. You can follow me specifically if you want on the Facebook page, or you can follow Cole on Twitter. He's also on the Facebook page. And he's also on Twitch. He's been streaming a lot more. He does a weekly stream every Friday. So if you want to hop in and give him shit, you can. But that's all I have to say on these two interesting subjects. I do look forward to seeing what Ocean's 8 has in store. I can't say that it's not a stacked cast. And I cannot wait for the final verdict of Ghostbusters. The final numbers. And that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for listening. And I will see you guys next time. Have a good night, everyone out there.